Listen up, you ugly black hag. My family owns half this street. You think some old black widow like you deserve to sit in the best seat? The slap cracked across Wanda Davis's face. Her head snapped sideways. Reading glasses flew off. Coffee exploded across the table. Betty's Corner Diner, Tuesday morning, downtown Atlanta. Wanda was 68, a widow for 3 months, a retired teacher who'd sat here every week for 3 years. Derek Harrison straightened his suit. 43, Regional VP of Harrison Property Development. Money was his power. The diner went silent. 24 people watching, nobody moving. What Derek didn't know was that Wanda had a son, a man who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan, a man who'd briefed generals and shaken hands with presidents. Derek thought power came from money. He was about to learn otherwise. Have you ever watched someone abuse their power and desperately wanted justice? Keep watching. What happens next will restore your faith. 45 minutes earlier, Wanda woke up in her small apartment. The routine never changed. Shower, coffee, Bible reading. She put on Samuel's faded army jacket, her late husband's name still stitched across the chest. Samuel Davis had died 3 months ago. Lung cancer. 41 years in postal service after military retirement. Now, Wanda lived alone on Social Security. The apartment felt too quiet, so every Tuesday she went to Betty's Corner Diner. Same booth, same time, 8 a.m. sharp. She arrived at 7:55. Betty's was an old-school diner. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, the smell of bacon and coffee. Maria Rodriguez was working, 28, single mother of 2. She'd served Wanda for 3 years. Black coffee, 2 eggs, wheat toast. "Good morning, Miss Davis. Your booth's ready." Wanda settled by the window, pulled out her Bible, Psalm 23, Samuel's favorite. She'd read it at his funeral, read it every Tuesday since. The diner filled with the morning crowd. Construction workers, business types, 2 older men arguing about basketball. George Morrison owned the place, 62, white Vietnam veteran. He'd bought it 15 years ago. George was decent, fair, but lately stressed. Harrison Property Development had been buying buildings nearby. His lease was up in 6 months. Harrison Property Development, the name that made residents nervous. Run by Randall Harrison and his son, Derek. Urban renewal, they called it. Buy buildings, evict tenants, renovate, charge rents that pushed out longtime residents. Already destroyed 3 blocks east, Derek Harrison had a reputation. Everyone knew his face, his expensive suits, how he walked into businesses like he owned them. Stories circulated. A bodega owner who refused to sell got health violations. A mechanic who fought eviction got buried in legal fees. James Carter knew. He sat in a corner booth. 55, black former mechanic. Harrison Development bought his building. James fought in court, lost. Legal fees wiped his savings. Now he worked part-time for half his old pay. James watched Wanda with her Bible. He'd known her for years, known Samuel too. Good people. Made his blood boil thinking about developers who only cared about profit. At 7:52, Derek's black Mercedes pulled up, parked in a handicapped spot, didn't glance at the sign, got out, adjusted his Rolex, Bluetooth earpiece in, talking loudly about property deals. Derek pushed through the door without holding it. Maria's stomach dropped. She'd dealt with Derek before. He'd been rude, snapped fingers like she was a dog, left no tip. Worse, her building had just been bought by Harrison Development, rent doubling, 60 days to pay or leave. George saw Derek, jaw tightened. He knew who Derek was, what the Harrisons were doing. But George was trying to survive. Couldn't afford enemies who might control his lease. Derek cut to the front, 4 people waiting. He ignored them. Quote, Baxtels. George hesitated. Quote. 1. Derek dropped a 100 bill on the counter. Quote, Utwatsu. George's face went red, hands shaking, not from fear, from shame. He took the money, caught Maria's eye. She looked disappointed, but understanding. Officer Bradley Cooper sat at the counter. 38, white, off-duty, but in uniform, stopped for breakfast after a night shift. He saw Derek cut the line, saw George take the money. Cooper looked down. Not his problem. He was tired. Being an entitled jerk wasn't a crime. Derek scanned the diner. Eyes landed on Wanda's booth. Window view. Best spot. He walked toward it. Maria intercepted. Quote, A. Derrick didn't look at her. Then, unoccupy it. Sir, the customer has been here since we opened. Derrick finally looked, eyes cold. Do you know who I am? Maria's voice was quiet. Quote, 4. Quote, 5. He smiled, not friendly. Quote, 6. Maria's face went pale. She looked at George. He turned away. Derrick walked past her, stood over Wanda's table. She was reading, glasses on, coffee steaming, just sitting peacefully. That's when he said it. Listen up, you ugly black hag. My family owns half this street. You think some old black widow like you deserved to sit in the best seat? Wanda looked up slowly, saw the contempt, the certainty he could say whatever he wanted. She spoke quietly. Young man, I've been coming here for 3 years. There are plenty of empty booths. His hand came up. The slap echoed through Betty's corner diner. Wanda's head whipped sideways. Reading glasses flew off and skittered across the floor. Coffee cup tipped, sending hot liquid flooding across the table and onto her lap. Samuel's jacket soaked instantly. Everything stopped. The entire diner went silent. Conversations cut off. Forks froze. Even kitchen noise stopped. Wanda sat stunned. Hands slowly came to her face. She could feel the heat where his fingers connected. The sting was sharp. But worse than the pain was the humiliation. The shock that someone had struck her in public, in front of all these people. Derrick stood over her, hands still raised, breathing hard, face flushed. For a second, even he looked surprised. But then his expression hardened. He'd committed, couldn't back down. Maria dropped her coffee pot. It shattered, her mouth open, tears forming. She wanted to run over, wanted to help, but her feet wouldn't move. James Carter was halfway out of his booth before he realized, fists clenched, every muscle tensed, but a hand grabbed his arm. Another regular, an older black man. Quote, James knew, black man confronts white businessman. Police called. Suddenly the black man is the aggressor, has a record. He stayed standing but didn't move forward, just shook with rage and helplessness. George Morrison froze behind the counter, face pale. This was his diner. Someone assaulted right in front of him. He should call police, throw Derrick out. But Harrison Development owned his lease. One phone call, and George could lose everything. Officer Cooper had been watching. He'd seen Derrick harass the old woman. Now the assault. Training kicked in. He stood, hand-checking his badge. Sir, I need you to step back. Derrick turned, saw the uniform. His expression flickered, uncertainty, maybe fear. But then he saw Cooper's face, saw hesitation, saw a cop who'd been sitting there and hadn't done anything until after the slap. Derrick's confidence returned. Officer, thank God this woman was belligerent. I asked politely for this booth, and she became aggressive. I felt threatened. I may have reacted defensively. Cooper blinked. That wasn't what he'd witnessed, but Derrick was already pulling out his phone. I'm calling my attorney and my father. I want this documented. An elderly woman threatening customers. Wanda was still sitting in shock. Coffee dripping, Bible soaked. Samuel's jacket ruined. She tried to speak, but her voice came out a whisper. Quote 2. Derrick pointed. Quote 3. The cruelty was breathtaking. Not only assault her, then try to make her look like the problem. Cooper looked between them. This should be simple. He'd witnessed assault. Derrick should be arrested. But Derrick was on his phone already making calls. Rich white businessman with lawyers versus elderly black woman with no resources. Paperwork would be endless. And if Derrick's father really had connections, Cooper's career could take a hit. Ma'am, are you hurt? Need medical attention? Wanda looked up, saw the uniform, the badge, someone who was supposed to protect. But she also saw hesitation, calculation behind his eyes. He hit me. You saw it. Cooper swallowed hard. Ma'am, maybe it would be best if you just move to another table. Let's not escalate. The words hung like poison. Let's not escalate. As if she was escalating. As if being told to move after being assaulted was reasonable. Derrick smiled. He'd won. He knew it. The cop knew it. Everyone knew it. Thank you, officer. Derrick pulled out his money clip, peeled off a 20, dropped it on Wanda's table. It landed in spilled coffee. For your trouble, sweetheart, Buy yourself breakfast somewhere else. Somewhere more appropriate for people like you. He said it loud enough for everyone to hear. People like you. Everyone knew what he meant. Wanda stared at the wet bill, then at Derek, then at Cooper, who couldn't meet her eyes, then at Maria, crying silently, then at James, frozen, then at George, who'd turned away. Nobody was going to help. Nobody was going to stand up. Nobody was going to do anything. She reached down and picked up her Bible from the puddle, pages soaked, ruined, like Samuel's jacket, like her dignity. She stood carefully, legs shaking, gathered what was left. Her phone had fallen on the floor, screen cracked, but it still worked. She could see notifications, 3 missed calls, 2 texts, all from Benjamin, her son, who was supposed to meet her here, who texted he was in town, who was on his way. She had to leave before he arrived. She needed to shield him from witnessing her in such a state. Wanda took a step towards the exit, her palms still pressed against her throbbing cheek. She could feel the swelling, taste the blood in her mouth from where her lip had been cut by her teeth. Derek watched her depart with evident satisfaction, then slid into the booth she had just vacated. He settled himself comfortably, spread out, and snapped his fingers at Maria. Coffee black and your best breakfast. I'm celebrating. Maria's hands trembled. She longed to spit in his face, to unleash a scream. However, she had 2 children at home, rent that was already a struggle and was about to double, and a job she desperately needed to keep. So she scribbled down his order and walked away without a word. Officer Cooper resumed his seat, picked up his coffee, but refrained from drinking. He merely stared into the cup. He had made his decision, and now he had to live with its repercussions. He rationalized to himself that he had prevented an escalation, ensuring everyone's safety, yet the words felt hollow. George Morrison stood behind the counter, his face ashen. He ought to contact the authorities and file a report. But what would be the point? Cooper had been present and had done nothing. Furthermore, if George were to object to Derek Harrison's actions, what would become of his lease? James Carter remained on his feet. His friend had released his grip, but James had not yet sat back down. He fixed Derek with an unwavering, intense gaze. James withdrew his phone. At the very least, he could take some action. He had captured the entire incident on video. From the moment Derek approached until Wanda rose to leave, this was tangible proof. But what would he do with it? Post it online? File a police report when the very officer who had witnessed it declined to intervene? James had navigated the legal system before. He understood its workings. He knew the weight a black man's testimony carried against that of a prominent white businessman. Nevertheless, he saved the video, just in case. Wanda reached the door and pushed it open. The cool morning air brushed against her face, a welcome sensation against her burning cheek. She stepped outside, and the door swung shut behind her. She caught sight of her reflection in the glass pane. Her face was already showing bruises, and her eyes were beginning to swell. She appeared as someone who had endured a confrontation, someone vanquished. She sat down on the bench outside, the one designated for waiting patrons. Her entire body trembled, not from the cold, but from shock, from humiliation, from the overwhelming burden of injustice. Her phone vibrated. A text from Benjamin. "Mom, I'm 10 minutes away. Can't wait to see you. Got something exciting to tell you. 10 minutes. Her son would be here in 10 minutes. She glanced down at herself. A coffee-stained jacket, a swollen face, a cracked phone. What would she tell him? She began to reply, intending to instruct him not to come, but her fingers trembled too violently to type. And besides, Benjamin would sense that something was amiss. He always did. Inside the diner, Derek was savoring his triumph. He had ordered the most expensive item on the menu, steak and eggs, hash browns, extra bacon. He was speaking loudly on his phone about property deals, ensuring everyone within earshot was aware of his success. "Yeah, we're closing on the building next week. The tenants are being difficult, but they'll be out by the end of the month. We don't negotiate with people who don't understand business." Maria delivered his food. She placed the plate down with more force than necessary. Coffee sloshed. Derek paid it no mind, too engrossed in explaining how he had just taught some old woman a lesson. You should have seen her face. These people think they're entitled to everything. Someone needed to remind her of her place. Maria's hands clenched into fists. She turned and walked away. George met her gaze. He could see how close she was to her breaking point, how much she longed to quit. But he also knew she couldn't afford to. James continued to record, persevering in his effort to gather evidence. He had shifted his focus to filming Derek's boasts. Every word, every chuckle, every callous remark. If nothing else, the world needed to witness the true nature of Derek Harrison. Other customers began to depart. One by one, they settled their bills and exited. No one wished to remain there any longer. The once cozy neighborhood diner had transformed into something repulsive, disgraceful. People left their money and slipped away surreptitiously, avoiding eye contact. Yet no one addressed Derek directly. No one confronted him. No one reported what they had witnessed. They all simply left, melting into the morning, resuming their lives as if nothing had transpired. Cooper finished his coffee and stood to leave. He could no longer bear to remain seated there, pretend that everything was acceptable. He placed money on the counter and headed for the door. As he passed Derek's booth, Derek called out, "Yes, quote, zero." Cooper's jaw tightened. He yearned to speak, to articulate his true thoughts to Derek. But instead, he offered a single nod and continued walking. Upon reaching the exterior, he observed Wanda on the bench, her face now visibly bruised, cradling her phone, weeping softly. Cooper paused momentarily. He should approach her, offer an apology, take some form of action. Yet, a profound sense of shame rooted him to the spot. He had made his choice inside the diner, and now he could not face the consequences. Consequently, he turned, walked to his car, and drove away, convincing himself that the situation was beyond his control. Wanda watched him depart, another individual who possessed the capacity to assist, but chose not to. She wasn't even taken aback. Such was the way of the world. Those in positions of power did as they pleased. Those without power endured suffering. Everyone else averted their gaze. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Benjamin. 5 minutes. Mom, just parked. Walking over now. 5 minutes. Her son was 5 minutes away. She looked back through the window. She could see Derek still occupying her booth, still speaking boisterously, still reveling in his victory. She ought to warn Benjamin, to tell him not to enter, to spare him from this ordeal. But she was weary, so utterly weary, tired of shielding everyone else from harsh realities, tired of suppressing her pain to avoid making others uncomfortable, tired of being instructed to maintain peace by remaining silent. So, she simply sat there, waiting, her hand pressed against her swollen cheek, Samuel's ruined jacket a heavy burden on her shoulders, anticipating her son. Inside, Derek remained oblivious to what was impending. He had spent his entire life evading repercussions for behavior of this nature. His father's wealth had consistently provided a shield. His family's influence had invariably smoothed over difficulties. He had never confronted genuine accountability. He finished his steak and eggs, signaled Maria for more coffee, and then complained that the eggs were overcooked despite their perfection. He left $1 as a tip on a $50 meal, then settled back into Wanda's booth, the one he had claimed by force, and he smiled. He had no inkling that 3 blocks away, a black SUV bearing government plates was approaching. Within that SUV was a man trained to respond to threats with decisive force, a man who had completed 2 tours in Afghanistan, a man who had led soldiers into combat, a man who had been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for valor under fire, a man whose mother had just been subjected to an assault. Benjamin Davis had been driving since 4 a.m., undertaking a 3-hour journey from Fort Benning to Atlanta. He had not seen his mother in 6 months. His deployment schedule had been relentlessly demanding. However, he now had a week of leave. Last month, he had received the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest military honor for extraordinary heroism in combat. Yet, the person he most wished to celebrate with was his mother. The SUV arrived at 8:32. Benjamin was attired in his Class A uniform, a full-dress uniform straight from the base. The uniform was immaculate. Rows of ribbons adorned it, including the Distinguished Service Cross, a prominent combat infantryman badge, the Ranger tab, jump wings, and the Silver Eagle insignia of a colonel on his shoulder boards. 2 MPs accompanied him, Sergeant Harris and Corporal Williams, not officially on duty. They had simply requested to ride along, both eager to meet the woman who had raised a man they deeply respected. Benjamin approached the entrance, a smile on his face, filled with anticipation. He had the citation for the Distinguished Service Cross in his pocket, eager to present it to his mother. It was then that he saw her through the window, seated on the bench, and his smile vanished. Her face was swollen, bruised, with blood at the corner of her mouth, her jacket soaked. She was holding her phone and weeping. His mother, the strongest woman he had ever known, sat alone, crying. Benjamin's training immediately engaged. Threat assessment, scan environment, identify source of danger, protect the civilian. In this instance, the civilian was his mother. He covered the distance in 4 long strides, dropped to one knee, and placed his hands gently but firmly on her shoulders. Quote, Wanda looked up, saw her son, the uniform, the concern etched on his face, and something within her shattered. All the fortitude she had been holding on to fractured. She reached for him, and he pulled her into an embrace. Quote, But Benjamin was already examining her face. His combat medic training took over. He could discern the pattern, the split lip, the swelling. Someone had struck her forcefully not long ago. Quote 2. His voice was exceedingly quiet, exceptionally calm, the kind of calm that indicated he was mere seconds away from violent action. Quote 3. Wanda attempted to pull away, to insist it didn't matter, but Benjamin's hands remained on her shoulders, patient, waiting. Quote, Benjamin's jaw clenched, his eyes turned cold, hard. The MPs behind him had overheard everything. They had become remarkably still. Both had served under Benjamin in Afghanistan. They recognized the meaning of that particular expression. Benjamin rose slowly, assisted his mother to her feet, and guided her back to the bench. Stay here, Mom. Harris, Williams, you're with me. He turned towards the entrance. The automatic commander's walk, purpose in every step. The door swung open. Colonel Benjamin Davis entered Betty's Corner Diner. In full Army dress uniform, Class A's, rows of ribbons adorned his chest, featuring the prominent Distinguished Service Cross. He wore the Combat Infantryman badge, Ranger tab, and jump wings, with the Silver Eagle insignia of a colonel on his shoulder boards. 2 MPs, also in dress uniform, flanked him. All 3 moved with military precision. The diner fell silent instantly. Every patron turned. 3 soldiers in full dress uniform did not simply enter random diners. Benjamin's eyes scanned the room. Tactical assessment, exits, potential threats, witnesses. His gaze settled on the booth by the window, where a white man in an expensive suit sat with his feet up, coffee in hand, smirking at his phone. Benjamin walked directly to that booth, his steps measured and controlled. The MPs followed behind him. Derrick looked up as the shadow fell across his table. He saw the uniform, the ribbons. His mind processed quickly. Military officer? So what? Derrick's father had connections. Booth taken, buddy. Find another. Benjamin didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, looking down at Derrick, his face completely neutral, but his eyes burning. This booth belongs to my mother. Derrick laughed. Actually laughed. Your mother? You mean that old black woman who was here earlier? Yeah, she left. Found somewhere more appropriate. The temperature in the diner dropped noticeably. Everyone was watching. Maria had frozen with the coffee pot. James had his phone out, recording. George was behind the counter, eyes wide. Stand up. Still quiet, still calm. Excuse me. Derrick's smirk faltered. Quote, Derrick's face went through several expressions: confusion, realization, fear. He looked at the uniform more carefully, observed the Silver Eagle, the Distinguished Service Cross, and the ribbons indicating combat service, foreign deployment, and decorations for valor. A full colonel, someone who commanded over 1,000 soldiers. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding. You assaulted a 68-year-old woman, my mother. You struck her in the face. You humiliated her in public. And then you sat down in her seat like you'd won something. Benjamin leaned down, bringing himself closer to Derrick's eye level, his voice dropping even lower, becoming more dangerous. Quote, 5. Derrick attempted to stand and leave, but Benjamin's hand came down on his shoulder. Not forcefully, not violently, but with a firm pressure that kept him in place. "You're not going anywhere. Sergeant Harris, would you call the local precinct? Tell them we have a witness to an assault. Tell them I'm filing charges on behalf of the victim." Harris pulled out his phone and began dialing. Derek's face had turned red. "You can't do this. Do you know who my father is? Do you know what kind of connections we have?" Benjamin smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "I've briefed the Secretary of Defense. I've dined with senators. I've been decorated by 2 different presidents for my service in Afghanistan. Your father plays golf with the police chief. That's cute. I coordinate operations with generals who make the decisions your father's political friends have to follow." He straightened up and looked around the diner, ensuring everyone was listening. "I'm a colonel in the United States Army. I've commanded combat operations. I've led men into battle. I've earned the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism. And I use that authority to protect American citizens. Citizens like my mother, who you assaulted in front of witnesses." The door opened. Wanda had come back inside. She couldn't stay away. She walked slowly toward the booth, her hands still on her bruised face. Benjamin saw her, and his expression softened instantly. He moved to her, took her arm, and guided her gently. "Mom, you shouldn't be standing." "No, I need to be here. I need to see this." George Morrison found his voice. He emerged from behind the counter. "Colonel Davis, sir. I'm George Morrison. I own this diner. I served in Vietnam. Sir, I saw everything. This man assaulted your mother. I witnessed it. I'll testify to that." Benjamin turned to George and nodded once. The nod carried weight. One veteran to another, a gesture of recognition, respect, and acknowledgement that George should have acted sooner but was stepping up now. Maria stepped forward, her voice shaky but determined. "I saw it too, sir. I'll testify. He threatened me earlier, threatened my job, my home, but I don't care anymore. What he did was wrong." James Carter came over with his phone. "I recorded the whole thing, Colonel, from the moment he walked up to your mother until she left. Everything's on video. You can have it." Benjamin took the phone. "Watch the video." His jaw tightened with every second that passed. When it finished, he handed the phone back. "Thank you. This is evidence. The chain of custody needs to be preserved. I'll need you to send this to investigating officers and testify if needed." "Absolutely, sir." One by one, other customers began speaking up. Those who had sat silent before, those who had been too afraid. They found their voices now because a man in uniform had stood up first, because someone with actual authority had finally used it to protect instead of harm. Derek was trapped, literally and figuratively. Surrounded by witnesses, by evidence, by a man who possessed the rank and connections to ensure he faced consequences. The door opened again. Officer Cooper walked back in. He had driven around the block 3 times, unable to bring himself to go home. Guilt had eaten at him. Now he saw the scene. The colonel in full dress uniform, Wanda and Derek looking panicked. "I'm Officer Cooper. I was here earlier. I witnessed the assault. I should have done something then. I didn't. That was wrong. But I'm here now. I'll file the report. I'll testify." Benjamin looked at Cooper for a long moment, saying nothing. His silence was more damning than any words. Cooper understood. He had failed his duty, but at least he was attempting to rectify it now. 5 minutes later, 2 more police cars arrived, the on-duty officers called by Sergeant Harris. They walked in, assessed the situation, and immediately began taking statements. The senior officer, a lieutenant, recognized Benjamin's rank immediately. He recognized the Distinguished Service Cross and stood a little straighter. Quote 4. "See that you do. I'll be monitoring this case personally. My mother deserves justice, real justice." Derek tried one more time, calling his father. Randall Harrison answered. Derek explained in frantic whispers. There was a long pause, then Randall's voice came through, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "You did what? You struck an elderly woman in public and now you're telling me her son is a decorated colonel? Derek, I can't fix this. You've finally gone too far. Don't call me again until you've dealt with the consequences." Quote 1. "Mom, why didn't you call me right away?" Wanda smiled through her tears. "Baby, you just got the Distinguished Service Cross. You have important work. I didn't want to burden you." Benjamin shook his head. "Mom, nothing is more important than you. Nothing. You are my mother. You raised me. Everything I am, everything I've accomplished, it's because of you. Some entitled punk laying hands on you? That's not something you spare me from. That's something I get to fix. He squeezed her hands. You taught me to stand up for what's right, to protect those who need it, to never back down from bullies. Today, I gotta use everything you taught me. I gotta stand up for you the way you always stood up for me. Quote, 1. Miss Davis, I'm so sorry I didn't speak up right away. Quote, 2. You were scared. I understand, but you found your voice when it mattered. That's what counts. George came over and sat down. Mrs. Davis, I failed you today. I was afraid of losing my business, but that's no excuse. I should have stood up immediately. I'm sorry. Wanda nodded. We all have moments we wish we could take back, George. What matters is what you do next. Cooper approached hesitantly. Ma'am, I don't expect forgiveness. What I did and what I didn't do was wrong. I will have to live with that, but I want you to know that I'll ensure this case is handled correctly. No shortcuts, no special treatment, just justice, true justice. Benjamin regarded Cooper for a considerable moment before nodding once. I will see that you do. James approached with his phone. Colonel, I will forward this video to you. Everything is documented. If you require me to testify, I will be there. Thank you. Your recording may have salvaged this case. Without it, it would have been her word against his. James nodded, looking at Wanda. Miss Davis, I have known you for years. You and Mr. Samuel, you are good people. What occurred today should not have taken place, but I am pleased that you have someone who will advocate for you. Wanda offered a smile. James, you advocated as well. You preserved evidence. You stayed. That is significant. The detective arrived to take official statements. Throughout the entire ordeal, Benjamin remained by his mother's side, holding her hand, ensuring she felt secure, and confirming the process was both respectful and thorough. As the situation began to de-escalate, the diner gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. The morning rush subsided. Customers came and departed. However, a palpable shift had occurred. An awareness, a change in the atmosphere. The patrons had witnessed something significant. Not merely an assault, but a community finding its voice, realizing that silence did not equate to safety. That indifference was not a neutral stance, and that sometimes one must take a stand even when it is difficult. Benjamin remained for 3 hours, ensuring all details were properly recorded, confirming his mother's well-being, making calls to guarantee a comprehensive investigation, and leveraging his connections not to bypass the system, but to ensure it functioned as intended. Before departing, he addressed everyone assembled in the center of the diner. Thank you all. Thank you for speaking out, for providing evidence, for doing what is right, even when it was challenging. My mother taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the action taken in spite of it. You all demonstrated courage today. Do not forget that. He placed an arm around Wanda. This is the most courageous woman I know. She did not require me to bestow dignity upon her. She possessed it inherently. I merely ensured that everyone else recognized it as well. Together, mother and son, they exited into the Atlanta morning. The sun was radiant, the air crisp, and for the first time in months, Wanda felt a flicker of hope. The subsequent 3 weeks passed with great speed. James Carter's video went viral within mere hours, garnering 5 million views on the first day and 10 million by the end of the week. The footage was clear and irrefutable. Derek verbally assaulting Wanda, the slap, her glasses flying, coffee spilling, and the inaction of 24 individuals. The public reaction was immense. There was widespread outrage, not only directed at Derek, but also at the bystander effect, the initial inaction of the officer, and the system that seemingly allowed individuals like Derek to believe they could escape consequences. Harrison Property Development faced significant negative publicity. Protests erupted outside their headquarters. Tenants began sharing accounts of harassment. Federal housing authorities initiated investigations. Within a week, Randall Harrison issued a statement renouncing his son's actions and announcing Derek's removal from all positions. However, the narrative that truly captivated the public's attention was the unexpected turn of events. The moment Colonel Benjamin Davis entered that diner in full-dress uniform, the confrontation, and the subsequent justice. Social media erupted. The hashtag Justice for Wanda began trending, eventually evolving into Wanda on Tuesday, a movement advocating for people to speak up when they witness discrimination. Every Tuesday, individuals shared stories of times they had intervened or remained silent. Betty's Corner Diner became a central point. George Morrison was interviewed on local news. He spoke candidly about his failure to act and his fear, but also about the changes he was implementing. He erected signs stating, "This is a safe space. Discrimination will not be tolerated. If you see something, say something. We will act." 2 days following the incident, a customer directed a racist comment toward Maria. George promptly expelled him, banned him permanently, and loudly denounced the action so all could hear. Maria received a promotion to shift manager. George granted her a pay increase, not due to the publicity, but because she merited it. She had stood up when it counted. She utilized the additional income to begin saving for night classes in business management. Officer Bradley Cooper faced an internal review for witnessing a crime and failing to intervene. The review board issued a formal reprimand, a 30-day suspension without pay, and mandated retraining on implicit bias and the duty to intervene. During his suspension, Cooper undertook an action he was not obligated to perform. He visited Wanda's apartment, knocked on her door, and offered a sincere, heartfelt apology in person, unassisted by legal counsel. He confessed his failure to her, admitting he had failed his oath and expressing his regret. Wanda invited him in for coffee. They conversed for 2 hours regarding fear, courage, and the burden of acting righteously despite difficulty. Cooper departed in tears. Wanda extended him grace, suggesting he could learn from this experience and become the kind of officer who would not hesitate in the future. Upon his return, Cooper was transformed, exhibiting greater awareness and a stronger inclination to speak out. He began conducting bystander intervention classes at the academy, utilizing his own lapse as a pedagogical tool. Derek Harrison's trial proceeded swiftly. Given the video evidence and multiple witness testimonies, his legal counsel advised a plea deal. Derek pleaded no contest to assault and battery with a hate crime enhancement, resulting in a 6-month sentence in county jail, 200 hours of community service in communities displaced by his father's company, 3 years of probation, and mandatory anger management and racial sensitivity training. A restraining order was issued, requiring him to remain at least 500 feet from Wanda. He was fined $15,000, payable directly to her. However, this was not the conclusion. Wanda initiated a civil lawsuit. Benjamin connected her with pro bono lawyers specializing in civil rights. Harrison Property Development reached an out-of-court settlement for a substantial sum. She did not retain all of it. Instead, she established the Samuel and Wanda Davis Education Fund to provide scholarships for minority students pursuing teaching degrees, recognizing the world's need for educators who understood adversity and could inspire children from challenging backgrounds. The inaugural scholarship was awarded 3 months later to a young black woman from the neighborhood, the first in her family to attend college. Standing on stage to receive the award, she tearfully stated her desire to become a teacher inspired by women like Wanda, emphasizing the importance of representation. Benjamin attended the ceremony in his dress uniform. He stood to the side as his mother delivered her speech. Afterward, when questioned by a reporter about whether he was proud, he responded, "I have always been proud of her. But what transpired at that diner was not about me saving her. It was about the world finally recognizing what I have always known. My mother is one of the strongest individuals I have ever encountered. She did not require me to imbue her with dignity. She possessed it inherently. I merely facilitated its acknowledgement by others." The federal investigation into Harrison Property Development uncovered evidence of systemic discrimination, predatory leasing practices, targeted harassment of minority tenants, resulting in $2.3 million in fines and settlements, mandated oversight, and an accountability board. Randall Harrison attempted to disassociate himself from the company's past, claiming ignorance, but his assertions were met with disbelief. His reputation suffered irreparable damage. Business relationships dissolved, and politicians ceased returning his calls. Derek served his 6-month sentence and, upon his release, attempted to rebuild his life. This proved difficult, as job applications were rejected and apartment rentals were denied due to his recognizable face from the viral video. Nevertheless, Derek himself began to change. Initially slowly and reluctantly, mandatory counseling compelled him to confront aspects he had never examined, such as his privilege, his assumptions, and his casual cruelty. His counselor assigned him apology letters, not for sending, but for practicing accountability. He composed one to Wanda, which he never sent, feeling undeserving of sending it. He kept it, however, reading it occasionally as a reminder of his actions and the harm he had inflicted. Whether Derek would genuinely change remained uncertain. Redemption is not a singular event, but an ongoing process and a daily choice. 6 months after the incident, Wanda returned to Betty's Corner Diner. She occupied the same booth at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, the same time she had previously visited. As she entered, the entire diner rose and applauded. She smiled, waved them down, and sat in her usual spot. Benjamin was also present, having timed his leave to coincide with her Tuesday breakfast. They sat together, mother and son, discussing everything and nothing, laughing, reminiscing about Samuel, and making plans. A young black girl, approximately 10 years old, shyly approached their table, her mother standing behind her. "Are you Mrs. Davis?" Wanda smiled. "Yes, I am, sweetheart. My mom says you're a hero, that you stood up to a bad man." Wanda gently shook her head. "No, sweetheart. I'm not a hero. I'm simply someone who refused to remain silent. And you know what? You can be that person too. You can stand up when something is wrong. You can use your voice. You are never too young or too old to do the right thing." The girl beamed and asked for a picture. Wanda agreed, and Benjamin took the photograph. The image captured Wanda with her arm around the young girl, both smiling proudly. This photograph also found its way onto social media, but this time, the comments were different. They were imbued with hope rather than anger, depicting a community healing and acknowledging the possibility of change. Betty's Corner Diner became a symbol, a place where injustices were rectified, silence was broken, and courage was discovered. George installed a plaque on Wanda's booth, designated as reserved for Mrs. Wanda Davis. He also added a sign by the door that read, "In this establishment, we stand up for each other. We speak up when we witness injustice. We believe dignity is not negotiable." This sentiment was taken to heart by the patrons. The diner became renowned as a place where discrimination was not tolerated, and where the community looked out for one another. It wasn't flawless. Nothing ever is. However, it was improved, and improvement warranted advocacy. A year following the incident, Wanda occupied her customary booth at Betty's Corner Diner. It was Tuesday morning, 8:01 a.m. The world had undergone transformations, both minor and significant, yet this ritual persisted, serving as her steadfast anchor. Benjamin was once more deployed. His location was undisclosed, but he was in contact every Sunday. His commanding officer had put him forward for promotion to brigadier general. Should it be approved, he would be among the youngest officers to attain general rank. Nevertheless, Wanda understood the reality. It wasn't Benjamin's rank that rendered him significant. It was his character. That character had been shaped right here in this neighborhood, within a modest apartment where resources were scarce, but affection was abundant. It was where she had instilled in him the principle that integrity was non-negotiable. The Samuel and Wanda Davis Education Fund had experienced expansion. 12 scholarships were dispensed over the preceding year. 12 young individuals were afforded opportunities they might otherwise have lacked. They were pursuing higher education, becoming educators, social workers, the kind of people who would advocate when confronted with unfairness. Maria approached with Wanda's coffee. She now held the position of manager and was attending evening classes. Last week, she had brought her children to the diner, introduced them to Wanda, and shared that this was the woman who had demonstrated to her the essence of bravery. James Carter made an appearance. He had established a new auto shop, smaller than his previous one, but it was his own. His enterprise was thriving, characterized by honest labor and equitable pricing. "Mrs. Davis," he began, "I just wanted to wish you good morning and express my gratitude." Wanda offered a smile. "James, you don't need to continue thanking me. You discovered your own courage." "Perhaps," he conceded, "but witnessing you that day, observing how you maintained your composure, that taught me something. Dignity isn't bestowed upon you. It's something you preserve irrespective of circumstances." Officer Cooper entered for his customary morning coffee. He offered a nod of respect to Wanda, and she reciprocated. An unexpected camaraderie had developed between them. Cooper was instructing intervention classes, making a positive impact. George Morrison placed a plate before Wanda, still complimentary, still his way of rectifying his prior silence. She had informed him numerous times that it wasn't necessary, yet George remained resolute. Therefore, she accepted it with poise. Around the diner, life continued its course. Conversations, laughter, the comforting aromas of coffee and bacon ensued. It was ordinary life. However, a subtle transformation had occurred beneath the surface, an increased awareness, a preparedness. Everyone present in that establishment understood the potential repercussions of remaining silent. Wanda retrieved her Bible, a new one gifted by Benjamin, and turned to Psalm 23, Samuel's preferred passage, reading the familiar verses. She reflected on Samuel, on the life they had constructed, on the son they had raised, and on the enduring legacy they were establishing. Samuel was no longer physically present, but his values persisted, his integrity, his conviction that every individual merited respect. A text message arrived from Benjamin. "Love you, Mom. Proud of you always." She replied, "Love you too, baby. Stay safe. Come home soon." She then put her phone down and gazed out at the street, observing individuals passing by. Each one carried their own burdens, their own dilemmas, their own choices between silence and speech. The events that transpired in this diner a year ago offered everyone a valuable lesson. Injustice flourishes in silence. Unchecked power devolves into abuse. And standing up, though daunting, is essential. Moreover, the courage of a single individual can galvanize an entire community. But the more profound lesson was this: one need not hold the rank of colonel to effect change. Power, wealth, or influence are not prerequisites. One simply needs to refuse to remain silent, to identify wrongdoing and label it as such, and to stand in solidarity with those in need of support. So, permit me to pose a question. Have you ever encountered injustice and chosen silence? Have you ever witnessed someone being mistreated and averted your gaze? The experiences of Wanda Davis are replicated daily in dining establishments, retail stores, public thoroughfares, and workplaces. Individuals wielding power engage in abuses, while those lacking it and bystanders observe, perhaps documenting but failing to intervene. The pertinent question is, what course of action will you adopt next time? Will you be the individual who looks away, or the one who stands firm? Will you permit apprehension to dictate your silence, or will you discover your fortitude? Because here lies the truth. Progress does not stem from influential figures deciding to improve. Rather, it emerges from ordinary people resolving to no longer tolerate injustice. Share this narrative not for the fleeting satisfaction it may provide, but because it underscores the potential that unfolds when individuals refuse to disregard adversity. Offer your thoughts in the comments section. Have you ever confronted injustice, or remained silent and experienced regret? What actions will you take differently in the future? Subscribe if you desire more narratives of this nature, accounts of genuine individuals, authentic courage, and tangible transformation. Recall, you do not need to be a colonel to make a difference. You merely need to be someone resolute in their refusal to remain silent. Emulate Wanda. Uphold your dignity. Insist upon respect. Maintain your position. Emulate Benjamin. Leverage whatever authority you possess to safeguard those in need. Emulate Maria. Discover your voice, even in the face of fear. Emulate James. Document instances of injustice. Provide corroborating evidence. Emulate George and Cooper. If you faltered previously, draw lessons from it. Act with greater resolve next time. This is precisely how communities evolve. One individual at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of bravery at a time. This chronicle pertains to Wanda Davis, yet it also mirrors your own story. The narrative of every instance where you've faced a choice between silence and expression, between security and justice, between looking away and standing firm. What will be your chosen path? The world is observing.